Have you ever noticed the paradox? The strange and unsettling phenomenon that seems to defy every piece of romantic advice we have ever been given. Have you ever wondered why a man sometimes falls deepest in love? Not with the woman who bends to his every need, not with the one who makes herself an open book, but with the woman who, at the precise moment of his burgeoning obsession, seems to need him the least? We are told to be available, to be soft, to be accommodating. We are taught that the path to a man's heart is paved with our own gentle self-effacement. But the reality, the one that plays out in the silent archetypal theater of the human psyche, is something far more complex, far more dangerous, and infinitely more powerful. The answer is not in playing hard to get. It is not a game of calculated distance or feigned indifference. That is the amateur's interpretation, a superficial reading of a profound spiritual and psychological event. The truth is something women have been biologically and culturally conditioned to overlook, a blind spot in our collective consciousness that has cost us centuries of heartache. It is a truth that, once seen, can never be unseen. What if I told you that this phenomenon is not about attraction in the way we understand it? It is not about beauty, or charm, or compatibility. It is the result of a deep, unconscious signal that a woman begins to emit only after a profound inner transformation. It is a signal of wholeness. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung spent his life mapping the unseen territories of the human soul, and in his work, he gave us a key, the concepts of the anima and the animus. For a man, the anima is the unconscious feminine part of his psyche, an inner image of the feminine that he carries within him. For his entire life, he unconsciously seeks this anima in the outer world, projecting her onto the women he meets. He is not falling in love with the woman herself, but with the reflection of his own soul he thinks he sees in her. And for generations, women have unconsciously learned to become blank screens for this projection. We have learned to be whatever his inner feminine needs us to be, the mother, the muse, the damsel, the siren. We contort ourselves into the shape of his emptiness, and we call it love. But what happens when a woman is no longer a blank screen? What happens when she is already a complete picture? This woman, the one who triggers this profound, almost terrifying devotion, is not playing a game. She has simply stopped being a projection. She has done the grueling, solitary work of what Jung called individuation. She has turned inward and faced her own inner masculine, her animus. Instead of seeking logic, protection, and direction from a man, she has cultivated it within herself. She has become a sovereign entity, a psychological and spiritual whole. When a man encounters such a woman, something in his psyche short-circuits. He cannot project his anima onto her because she is already full. Her presence is so total, so complete, that there is no room for his fantasy. His unconscious mind does not see a missing piece of himself. It sees a completed self, a terrifying and magnetic vision of what he, too, could become. He is not falling in love with her because she completes him. He is falling in love with her because she shows him, in no uncertain terms, how incomplete he truly is. This is the secret women have been trained to ignore. A man's deepest, most transformative love is not triggered by a woman's need for him, but by her palpable and radiant lack of it. Before she understood this, she was like so many others. She loved until she was empty. She gave until her hands were raw and her heart was a hollowed-out cavern. She had confused attachment with love, self-sacrifice with devotion. In her past, love was a negotiation, a constant, low-grade performance. She was an actress playing a part she hadn't realized she'd auditioned for. She would study her partners, learning their needs, their wounds, their desires, and she would meticulously craft herself into the balm they sought. If he was wounded, she became the healer. If he was lost, she became the lighthouse. If he was insecure, she became his biggest cheerleader, hollowing out her own ambitions to make more room for his. She believed this was the currency of love. Her value, she thought, was directly proportional to her utility in a man's life. She was the fixer, the savior, the emotional caretaker, the one who would love him so completely he would have no choice but to heal and love her back with the same intensity. But that is not how the psyche works. You cannot heal another's wound by bleeding onto it. The men she attracted then were not partners. They were recipients. They were emotional black holes, unconsciously drawn to the light of her giving. They spoke a certain language, a dialect of dependency she was fluent in. Phrases like, "You're the only one who has ever understood me," were not compliments. They were chains. The statement, "All my exes were crazy," was not a confession. It was a warning, a subtle framing of the narrative where he was always the victim and she was being auditioned for the role of the one sane woman who could finally fix him. He would say, "You have to accept me as I am," which was code for, "I have no intention of growing, and you must absorb all the consequences of my stagnation." She would hear these red flags not as alarms, but as challenges. Her ego was invested in being the exception. She would be the one to finally crack the code, to love him into wholeness. It was a form of supreme arrogance disguised as selfless love. She was not loving him. She was trying to rewrite his story to validate her own. And with every failed attempt, a piece of her own story was erased. This pattern created relationships that were not unions but toxic codependent systems. They were built on a foundation of unspoken contracts. He provided a flicker of attention, and she provided the emotional labor of 1,000 suns. He would give her crumbs of validation, and she would feast on them for weeks, convincing herself it was a banquet. The dynamic was always unbalanced, a subtle dance of control where her worth was perpetually in his hands. She lived in a state of anxious vigilance, constantly monitoring the emotional temperature, ready to soothe, to placate, to perform. Exhaustion was her constant companion. It was an exhaustion so deep it felt elemental, a soul-level fatigue from the endless work of holding up another person's reality while her own crumbled. She mistook the intensity of this drama for passion. She confused the gut-wrenching anxiety of his potential departure with the depth of her love. She did not realize she was not afraid of losing him. She was afraid of facing the emptiness within herself that she was using him to avoid. The awakening did not come as a lightning bolt. It was not a single cinematic moment of epiphany. It was a slow, grueling erosion. It was the drip, drip, drip of 1,000 tiny disappointments that finally wore through the stone of her denial. It was the relationship that was not just bad, but was an exact, soul-crushing replica of the one before it, and the one before that. It was the moment the pain stopped feeling like a fresh wound and started feeling like a recurring symptom of a deeper disease. The turning point was not a decision to leave a man. It was a decision to stop abandoning herself. It was the chilling realization that the common denominator in all her failed relationships was not them, but her. Her willingness to accept the unacceptable. Her eagerness to fill a void. Her desperate, unspoken plea to be chosen, which ensured she was always chosen by those who could not truly choose. Pain, when it becomes unbearable, has only two paths: destruction or transformation. She stood at that crossroads, exhausted and broken, and for the first time, she chose to turn her gaze inward. This began the descent, the journey into her own underworld, the dark night of the soul that all true transformations demand. She had to stop running, stop distracting, stop seeking external solutions for internal famines. She had to sit in the silence and face the ghost she had been using men to ward off. The ghost of her unworthiness, the ghost of her fear of being alone, the ghost of the little girl who learned that her value was in being good and helpful. This is the work of confronting the shadow, as Jung would say. It is the terrifying process of owning the parts of ourselves we have disowned and projected onto others. She had to look at her need to save men and see it for what it was. A desperate attempt to control, a way to feel valuable by making another person dependent on her. She had to look at her selflessness and see the profound selfishness hidden within it, the egoic need to be the one who finally heals the broken man. It was ugly work. It was brutal work. It meant grieving not for the men she had lost, but for the version of herself she had lost in the process of trying to keep them. She began to rebuild herself not from the outside in, but from the inside out. The first act of this new life was the reclaiming of her solitude. Before, solitude was a punishment, a waiting room between relationships, an emptiness to be filled. Now she began to explore it as a sanctuary. She learned to nourish herself with silence. She discovered that her own company was not a void, but a universe. She started to listen to the whispers of her own soul, the ones that had been drowned out by the clamor of other people's needs. She found that she contained her own logic, her own protection, her own direction, the very qualities she had been seeking in a partner. This is the process of integrating the animus. It is when a woman stops outsourcing her inner masculine and begins to embody it. She becomes her own rock, her own anchor. The ground beneath her feet is no longer a man's approval, but her own unshakable sense of self. From this newfound wholeness, a new set of behaviors emerges, not as a calculated strategy, but as the natural expression of her new state of being. The first is that she no longer seeks validation, especially through argument or explanation. In the past, she would have debated, pleaded, and presented evidence for her feelings to be seen as valid. She would have exhausted herself trying to make an unempathetic partner understand her point of view. Now, she understands that a person's capacity for empathy is not something she can create through logic. Her silence becomes more powerful than her words. She states her truth, her boundary, her feeling, and then she stops. She does not require agreement or understanding. Her truth is valid because it is hers. This calm detachment is not coldness. It is sovereignty. It is profoundly unsettling to a person who is used to controlling others through emotional debate. It shatters the very foundation of manipulation. The second behavior is a deep and genuine appreciation for her own solitude. This is perhaps the most misunderstood and threatening quality she now possesses. A world built on consumerism and codependency tells us that being alone is a failure. But she has transmuted loneliness into a powerful, generative solitude. She does not fear an empty evening or a weekend with no plans. She covets it. It is in this space that she communes with herself, that she creates, that she rests, that she expands. When she says, "I need some time to myself," it is not a passive-aggressive punishment or a test. It is a true statement of her need to recharge in her own sovereign space. A man who is insecure reads this as rejection. He thinks, "What is wrong with me that she prefers to be alone?" A man who is whole understands it perfectly. He recognizes it because he, too, values his own inner world. He does not see her solitude as a threat to their connection, but as the very source of its strength. Third, she learns to speak her truth without the twin masks of aggression or apology. Before, her needs would either come out as a passive-aggressive sigh or an explosive, tear-filled accusation, both born from the frustration of long-suppressed feelings. Now, her communication is clean. It is direct. She can say, "That does not work for me," or "I am not available for that kind of interaction," with a calm and centered gravity. There is no charge, no blame, no hidden agenda. It is a simple statement of fact. This form of communication is profoundly disarming. It offers no hook for an argument, no emotional fuel for a dramatic fire. It is the language of a woman who is not trying to change another person, but is simply honoring her own reality. She has released the illusion that her peace depends on someone else's behavior. Her peace is her own responsibility, and she guards it with gentle, unwavering boundaries. Fourth, and perhaps most critically in the dating world, she develops an almost psychic ability to recognize projection. Because she has done the work of integrating her own shadow, she immediately recognizes when a man is not seeing her, but is instead trying to cast her in the movie playing in his own head. She can feel the subtle shift when a conversation stops being about two real people connecting and becomes about him seeing her as a symbol. The nurturing mother to heal his childhood wounds, the wild muse to cure his boredom, the angelic savior to absolve his sins. She no longer feels flattered by these projections. She feels erased, and she will not participate. She will gently but firmly refuse the role. She does this not by calling him out, but by consistently and calmly reasserting her own authentic self, a self that may not align with his fantasy. She does not bend. She does not contort. She remains herself and allows the projection to shatter against the solid reality of her being. Fifth, her love, when she chooses to give it, is an entirely different substance. It is no longer a desperate plea from a place of scarcity. It is not a transaction designed to secure affection or safety. It is a gift, offered freely from a place of profound abundance. Because she is already whole, she does not need a partner to complete her, to validate her, or to save her. Therefore, her love is pure. It is not contaminated by need. She chooses a partner not because she is lonely, but because his presence adds a beautiful, resonant harmony to the song her soul is already singing. This is the difference between love as a form of hunger and love as a form of art. She is not seeking to consume. She is seeking to create something new with another whole being. This kind of love does not drain. It energizes. It does not bind. It liberates. It is the love that exists between two sovereigns, not a master and a servant or a patient and a doctor. And this brings us to the sixth and most powerful state of being, the paradox that sits at the very heart of this transformation. By becoming completely, radically self-sufficient, by building an inner world so rich and fulfilling that she truly does not need a man's love to feel whole or happy, she creates the precise psychic and energetic conditions for mature, authentic love to finally enter her life. It is the ultimate cosmic irony. The thing she chased so desperately, the love and validation she was willing to sacrifice herself for, could only find her when she completely and utterly stopped chasing it. Why? Because the men who were drawn to her neediness were, by definition, men who could not handle her strength. They were parasites seeking a host. When the host healed herself and stopped emitting the signal of a wound, the parasites lost interest. They were repelled by her health, and in their place a different kind of man could finally see her. This new man is not seeking a woman to fix. He is not looking for a mother or a therapist. He is on his own journey of individuation. He is doing his own work. And when he encounters her, he does not see an object for his fantasy or a solution to his problems. He sees a mirror. He sees a reflection of his own potential for wholeness. Her sovereignty does not threaten him. It inspires him. Her independence does not make him feel insecure. It makes him feel free. He is not drawn to her because he wants to possess her light, but because he wants to stand beside her and have their two lights shine even brighter together. This is the sacred alchemy. This is what Jungian psychology hints at. The true Konyangsho, the sacred marriage, is not between a man and a woman, but between two whole individuals who have first achieved a sacred marriage within themselves. The world, however, is not always ready for this woman. Her very existence is a quiet rebellion against the status quo. She makes people deeply uncomfortable, especially those who operate in the old paradigm of control and codependency. To a man who has built his identity on being the strong one, the provider, the savior, her self-sufficiency can feel like a personal affront. It invalidates his entire script. He may call her cold, intimidating, difficult, or that most revealing of insults. Too independent. These are not descriptions of her. They are confessions of his own inadequacy in the face of her wholeness. She also awakens fear and admiration in other women. Some, still trapped in the old ways, will see her as a threat or judge her for being too picky. Others will see her as a beacon, a living permission slip to begin their own journey inward. She becomes a silent teacher, her presence a question that hangs in the air. What if you stopped begging for crumbs and realized you owned the entire bakery? She learns to gracefully dismiss the chorus of societal pressure that tells her she is running out of time, that her standards are too high, that a good man is hard to find. She understands these are the chants of a system designed to keep women in a state of low-grade panic, eager to settle for less than they deserve. She smiles an almost ironic smile when someone tells her, "You're too picky," because she knows the truth. She is not picky. She is selective. She is not demanding. She has standards. She is not difficult. She simply will not participate in dysfunction. She is the guardian at the gate of her own life, and the price of admission is respect, reciprocity, and emotional maturity. It is a price many are unwilling or unable to pay, and she is profoundly, peacefully okay with that. Her peace is no longer contingent on having a partner. It is contingent on honoring herself. She has defied a world that still preaches that happily ever after only exists in pairs, and has discovered the radical joy of her own singular, complete existence. So, when a man finds himself inexplicably, magnetically, almost unwillingly drawn to this woman, what is he truly falling for? He is not falling for a tactic or a strategy. He is falling for the resonance of her wholeness. His soul, his unconscious anima, recognizes in her a state of integration that it longs for. She is not an answer to his problems, but a catalyst for his own evolution. Loving her requires him to grow. Being with her demands that he face his own shadows, that he cultivate his own inner world, that he become a sovereign in his own right. It is the most challenging and transformative invitation he will ever receive. Many men will flee from this invitation. It is too much work. It asks them to dismantle the very ego structure they have built their lives upon. But the one who stays, the one who accepts the challenge, is the one who is ready for a love that is not about possession, but about mutual becoming. In the end, the deepest secret of the male psyche, the bizarre and deeply rooted reason a man truly falls in love, is this: he is not captured by the woman who makes herself small enough to fit into his world. He is captured by the woman whose world is so vast and complete that he is inspired to expand his own. The love that comes for this woman, the awakened woman, will be of a different quality and texture than anything she has known before. It will not feel like salvation because she no longer needs saving. It will not be a desperate grasp for completion because she is already whole. It will be a celebration, a meeting of two complete universes who choose to orbit one another, not out of need, but out of a shared sense of wonder and delight. It is the love that does not seek to solve, but to witness. The love that does not seek to change, but to champion. This is the great and hidden prize at the end of the long, dark journey of self-retrieval. It is the promise that after all the work, after all the pain, after all the lonely nights of facing your own ghosts, you do not just find yourself. You create the very conditions for a love worthy of the person you have become. The ultimate lesson is not how to be loved by another, but how to never, ever lose yourself again. If something inside you was stirred by this story, if a quiet recognition flickered in the depths of your own soul, know that it is not an accident. Perhaps this message did not find you by chance, but by resonance. It is a whisper from the part of you that knows your own wholeness, the part that is tired of playing small, the part that is ready to come home to itself. This journey from dependency to sovereignty is the great, unspoken work of our time. It is the path from being a half, searching desperately for another half, to becoming a whole, ready to meet another whole. Can you feel that potential within you? This is more than just a theory. It is a map out of the labyrinth of codependency and into the open field of self-possession. It is a call to begin your own descent, to face your own shadows, and to reclaim the magnificent, sovereign power that has always been yours. If this exploration of the human heart and psyche has resonated with you, let that resonance be in action. Share this video not as a passive act, but as a conscious choice to spread this message of wholeness. Like it if you felt its truth. And in the comments below, share your own response to this question. Which part of this journey resonates most deeply with you right now? Let us create a community of sovereigns right here in this space. And finally, subscribe to this channel. Not out of impulse, but out of choice. A choice to continue this conversation, to keep exploring these depths, and to let this message of empowerment keep resonating in your life.